Hello and welcome back to the Game Room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1,857 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Well, we covered my favorite new releases of 2023 last week. This week, let's talk about the backlog I managed to clear out this year, which I think totals out to about 19 games. So we got things covering the gamut from modern consoles to old retro consoles and some stuff in between. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
So I'm going to do my best to do this in order of the way I played it throughout the year. Now, like I said, I'm not including any releases that came out in 2023. And the first game I played this year was Diofield or Diofield Chronicles. So I really enjoyed this game. Now, this was a late release in 2022. I got it for Christmas, and this was one of the things I knew I immediately wanted to address, just because, unlike the Octopath games with the HD 2D, I wanted to see what this was like, because it used more of a traditional 3D engine, but they almost looked like chess pieces moving on the board, and it's sort of a hybrid RTS mixed with a little bit of a turn-based strategy, almost like a turn-based MOBA game at times, but way better than that in my opinion. And even though as the game progressed, I did find a win button where I used this one dude on a wyvern to do a tornado, get everyone together and kill them. But I had fun. I actually did platinum the game. I generally don't platinum many games, but I was just enjoying playing it, and I really felt like I got my money's worth on this. You can find this for about $20 right now. I'd pick it up. It's on multiple systems. Probably I'd aim for something that's not on the Switch, just because it's probably more graphically intensive. It would stutter on that. But I see this being a rarer game down the line. I don't know how well it sold. When it came out, it was only a $50 release, I believe, but well worth it. Well worth checking out, and it was a great way to start off the year. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And what's funny is when Final Fantasy 16 came out, it's almost like the map system and certain things that are in FF16 were tested in this game, and was nice. I enjoyed it. So right directly after that was another game that I got for the PS5, and that is Trek to Yomi. So this was a funny experiment because I played the first session of this, I didn't like it, and within 5 minutes of the second session, I got a new ability that allowed me to execute people that made the game so much more enjoyable. And it kind of goes to my, when is it okay to review a game? Because if I had stopped after the first session and said it sucked, then that would have been true. But by just playing it a little longer, it turned the game from a skip it to a very solid play it. And also, I played it on hard mode, and when I went through to get footage for it, I played it on normal mode, and then the enemies died in 2 hits anyway, so my execute strategy didn't even really work, which maybe I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much regardless, because I really just enjoy those execute phases in these type of games. But it's kind of your standard 2.5D action samurai type game, very heavily Kurosawa inspired. The angles and the cinematography of the game are probably the best things to look at in this game. It's beautiful to behold. It is very clearly inspired by those old Japanese black and white films, and it does a good job of it. I just wish the combat lined up a little bit better with that. And then it descends into madness like all these Japanese games do, where it goes off into this spirit realm and other things. It's a shorter game too, but it felt longer, if that makes sense. So another one to pick up if it's cheap. I think you can find it for $10, $20, something of that nature. But that was the second game. And then the third one, which was another one that I had, these were all 2022 releases, so I wanted to get them knocked out early. The next one was Mario Rabbids The Sparks of Hope. So it uses that XCOM style that I love, but then they removed the tracked walking. They added a lot more active abilities, and overall, not as much fun as the first one. I would highly recommend that people play the first one over this one. The first one's cheaper, and with this one, it's still a fun game, but it literally removed a lot of the strategy and a lot of the joy I had from the first one. And I didn't get much challenge from the game until the very end, which kind of redeemed it. But they added, they do these new tropes where a lot of writing nowadays has characters show up and not explain it, and then by the end of the game, it makes sense why they were there. But I don't know about you guys, but I enjoy in writing when there's foreshadowing or clues or something where if you watch it again, you can then be like, oh, I could have picked up on that, or oh, that was foreshadowing, instead of these things where it's just, oh no, I would never have guessed that. Okay, even going back, like they introduced a new character with a giant sword that is related to the bad group of villains, and somehow she splintered off, but it has nothing to do with Mario characters, has nothing to do with anything. So when you see Mario, when you see Rabid Peach and Rabid Lucina, Rabid whatnot, you're thinking like, what is this, Rabid Cloud Strife? What's going on here? It just, there's no way of predicting it, and I find that so unfortunate when games do that. And it didn't kill the experience, but it did remove some of the charm, because I felt like all the characters from the first game just kind of got put on the back burner because they were really trying to push this new set of characters that I really could care less about. Also in the fact that I've never been the biggest Mario Galaxy fan, so they really lean heavily into the Mario Galaxy-ness of it, and mitigating your abilities to be less predictable, and you don't have the bounce and the honey and the ink abilities. Those are all now tied to specials, and it really streamlined the combat in a bad way. Had the first game been like this, I probably wouldn't be so harsh about it, because it's still a fun game, but it really, for myself, felt like they tried to dumb down the combat to make it more approachable, which just alienated the fans who would have bought it day one. So a lot of people didn't buy it day one, and then didn't really do much to entice new fans, because if you're not into that kind of style, you're not really, you're not drawing anyone in with that game. But anyways, I digress. Next game after that was one that came out, I think it was 2022 as well, was TMNT Shredder's Revenge. So this was a game that I started playing, but I didn't actually finish it until this year. And I finished it this year. I enjoyed playing through it. It's a quick play. It's a beat 'em up. There's a lot of levels. It is a nice love letter to those old school TMNT Turtles in Time type Turtles games. And I enjoyed playing it. I didn't try it online. I enjoyed the nods to the older games, but unlike Streets of Rage 4, where I really felt like it was an evolution of the series, and it made me want to keep playing it, and I really liked it, I didn't get that same feeling in this. I don't know if it's because I've just fallen off on the Turtles in recent years, or if it just didn't strike that same itch because Streets of Rage 4 did. But overall, a solid game, very worth picking up. I actually have it digitally as well, because I couldn't wait for my physical copy. That's why I have it this way. But that was the next thing I played, and I did that in like a day. Like some of these games I just knocked out, not to try and add to my list, but just I was plugging holes in between new releases, because this, like I said, this year I played more new games than I have in quite some time. But I did have a big prolonged break, and I finally knocked one of the biggest games off my backlog I've ever had, which is the legendary Xenogears. Dang, it's one of those things that it's always so nice when you play something that you've heard is so good, and then when you're playing it, you start to get it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is why everyone talks so highly of this. I see. I understand. I can join your club now. Let me get in the pool. And yes, I get it. This game is incredible. The story is phenomenal. The different ways characters come and go from your story, the different ways you traverse this world, you learn about the history of the world, and back to the writing thing. So a lot of the stuff that happens in this, you can see foreshadowed. They mention it. It uses a little of that unreliable narrator, or that, oh, where did this person come from? And then it makes sense later in the game. But it does it in a smart, clever way where it doesn't just hit you like a ton of bricks out of nowhere, to where you can start seeing that. And a lot of it has to do with death and rebirth and people finding themselves throughout the ages and the power of love, and a lot of just different allusions to Christian mythology and things of the like, and is just a powerhouse of a game. And then you get the disc 2 and it's not even finished. Like, I can't believe all these years I went through not knowing that the second disc was really just not a storybook, but just what kind of did the cliff notes of the rest of the game, because they ran out of time. And for a game to have such a legendary reputation and have that still happen in it, just speaks to the pedigree that this game has and how you should definitely do what you can to play it. There's got to be a remake of it coming someday. Maybe after they finish Final Fantasy VII Remake, this one is primed for it. Or if the Monolith team, after Xenoblade 3, can somehow work out something. I mean, the nice thing about a lot of developers is they're playing a lot nicer these days. So I don't think that's as impossible to imagine as it once would have been. Alright, next we have a quick one here. So for years, I've been wanting a game for the Sega Saturn. I don't have a Saturn. I have no games on the Saturn. But there is a sequel to a game called Elevator Action that I've always wanted to play, and it's called Elevator Action Returns. And I finally broke down this year because I did a video about sequels I didn't know about. And I picked up Title Legends 2 because Elevator Action Returns is on this. And I finally went through and played it, and my goodness, did it not disappoint. It is a fun arcade game, run and gun shooter in the vein of Contra a little bit, not nearly as difficult, uses a little bit of that elevator action DNA, but it is way different than elevator action. For the better, not necessarily. I still love elevator action, but there's only so much you can do with that style, so they turned it into an over-the-top action series. You're going through multiple different levels. You can play as 3 different types of people that play slightly different. And it's just a very fun time. I think they just re-released it on modern consoles as a download title. So definitely one that I would recommend checking it out. I think it's pretty cheap. After that, we had a game that was told to me by one of my new Patreon supporters who said, hey, you should play Silent Hill. And I've been looking for an excuse to play the first Silent Hill for a long time. So there it is. And I finally had it. And also, I know that Silent Hill, like the original Resident Evil, is a game you can beat in a week if you put in enough time. So I went in, I beat it in a week, and holy crap. As much as a wimp as I can be with these horror games, I jumped in headlong, loved every minute of it, loved the unsettling experience, and my thoughts were even given the green light of approval from noted Silent Hill scholars like my buddy Avalanche Jared, who did agree that I had a good head on my shoulders with how the game played. The person who bribed me with the Patreon support said to love the review, so it worked. And I was very happy with finally playing that game. I didn't see everything. I missed a little bit in the third section, the pier section. I didn't find the dude who has the gun to his head, like the doctor, so I didn't get the ultimate good ending. But something that would definitely be worth going back and trying in another October or something of that nature. And since then, I have picked up Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3. I mortgaged my house, so I am looking forward to trying those two someday. Alright, after that, we have another sequel to a great game, and that is Wetrix 2, otherwise known as Aqua Aqua. And this is pretty solid. I gotta say, playing this game played like the way I remembered Wetrix on the N64. Felt a little smoother. Now, the controls were a little harder for me to gather myself around at the beginning, and they've added a lot of new features that drop down as you're playing it. Things like you have goals to go. There's random tsunami type events that will come and attack you. Maybe it's a little overblown in some regards, but there's a story mode which is pretty cool. So that's cool to check out. And it's always nice in a game where it doesn't really traditionally have a campaign or a story mode, but to have it in there at least gives you something to say you beat it, because it's kind of hard to say you beat Tetris unless you get through the hardest level on the hardest skill level and you get 1,000,000 points. Oh no, it's arbitrary. But with this, there actually was an ending, and it was fun. I was glad to check it out. I'd love to see it. It's funny, I'm not a big puzzle game fan, but I for some reason I really, really appreciate the Wetrix series, and I've been trying to pick up Wetrix Plus for the Dreamcast, which I think is really just more of the same, but hey, I'd have the complete Wetrix at that point. Alright, next game was a tactical game that I've been wanting to try out for years. I picked it up, and I wanted to try it right away, and that was Rhapsody, a Musical Adventure, which actually is a musical. Who would have known? I did not expect there to be singing and dancing in this game. And it's funny. Yeah, it's a girl game, but the combat is a joke, but the story is surprisingly dark. There's some good humor in it. And, once again, back to the writing, there are things that you can see if you play it the second time. You'll be like, oh, that was that. Oh, mind blown. Instead of it just appearing from some Deus Ex Machina at the end, or, it was a metaverse, or whatever BS we're using nowadays. But yeah, Rhapsody, really solid game. They have re-released it on modern consoles as part of the Nihon collection, volume 2 or 3, I think. And they just released the unreleased in America Rhapsody 2 and 3, which I would love to check out. But I think you could only play the original tactical version of it on the PS1, because after that they updated it to be a traditional turn-based game. It's probably better that way. The tacticalness of it was very mediocre. For the most part, I just found myself using an area clearing effect and then not doing much else. But there is an interesting mechanic of banking turns with the main character, with her Cornet, I think her name is. And then you can use that to drop ultimates that store up between fights. But overall, fun game. Alright, the next one was one of the last Quintet games I needed in my collection, and I really wanted to check out because I love the Quintet trilogy on the SNES, and that is Grand Stream Saga. And this is an interesting game because all of the main characters in Game Engine have no face, but then there's a lot of cutscenes outside of it. And it takes place in a world where all of the humans have been relegated to these floating islands that only can be lifted up by getting renewed by some spirit of the winds or something of that nature. But they're starting to droop, so that instead of being able, because they can't renew it, they're cutting parts of the island off to keep it from falling. And then that's where your character comes in, is that he goes on this journey to then repair all of the different islands, and it gets pretty deep, just like Quintet always does. It's got a unique story, but it just doesn't hammer it home as well as also the fact that they go into this new 3D style combat that is very interesting. I've never seen anything else like it in another game, but ultimately I think it just doesn't work all that well, and that is part of the problem of what led to the downfall of this series, or even the developer, because they did a few games after this, but they really started to lean into their weirdness post Grand Stream Saga. That's where you start getting stuff like Planet Laika and the like. But after that, I then moved on to a game that I've been desperately wanting to check out, which is Infernax. And Infernax, I cannot speak highly enough about. This game is so good. It combines old school Castlevania with old school Legend of Zelda 2. So you think of those two games having a baby, throw in a lot of over-the-top violence, smart level design, great replayability with different campaigns with different main characters, including one where you can play as a dude from Splatterhouse. It's just fun all around, and a pretty short playthrough as well. You can beat this game in about 6-7 hours, so that's always a benefit in my book. Leading after that, I kind of had a Switch craze, because I think between Tears of the Kingdom and Final Fantasy 16, so I had time to beat some of my smaller indie games I picked up. One of which was a game called Gunborg Dark Matters. So I believe I picked this up off a recommendation from Radical Reggie, maybe on a Metal Jesus Pickups video. And it's got a really nice synthwave soundtrack. It has some interesting mechanics with the way you bounce off things with your shield. You can only take so many hits. But overall, I just found the game a bit of a letdown. It is hard, but not in a good way. And other than it overly relies on the neon visuals, but it's kind of shallow as far as the experience goes. Like, it's not quite hard enough to be super challenging, but also so hard that it's also feels tedious at times to have to go through it. And then I still enjoyed it though. It's still worth picking it up. I would still recommend picking that game up. Not as much as Infernax, but definitely still worth getting for like $10-15. Now, a game that I did get up on another recommendation from them that I don't recommend is a game called Huntdown. I don't know what it is. I just didn't like this game. It really just did not click with me. It's another run and gun style type of game. You have a life bar. I just found it over. I don't know. Maybe I played too many of these in a row. I just didn't like it. I didn't like all three of the different characters had slightly different skill sets, but it felt like a slog going through the levels. It relied too much on you getting burst damaged out of nowhere, bullet sponge enemies, and then just I didn't. The soundtrack was meh. The characters were so on the nose with the different gangs you were taking out. Other than the second area, which had a really interesting boss fight with a big monstrous goalie, every one of the boss fights I just found kind of meh. And that's kind of hold the game in general. It's just kind of meh. But after that, speaking of meh, I played Jedi Fallen Order. Because I've been wanting to check this game out. I heard it was a Star Wars version of Dark Souls. And yeah, that's kind of what it is. Unfortunately, I didn't know it was Disney Star Wars based. So it takes place, you're playing as Cal Kestis, another Jedi that somehow survived Order 66. Which, for you guys who don't know, because I really wouldn't know unless I've been inundated with this stuff, that's in Return of the Sith when Anakin goes and kills all the Jedis. Somehow this one survives, Ahsoka survives, I'm sure some other random Jedi survive. Like every time, like that guy in Rogue One who used a stick is probably a Jedi. Like, it really kills the importance of Luke Skywalker and Leia that they keep having all these other Jedis. Because who the hell are Ben Kenobi and Yoda talking about when there's another? Like, it should be like, no, there are 17 others. And like, it doesn't really, I mean, I don't know. But yeah, back to the game. So it's just kind of meh. It's interesting enough, but the biggest drawback I think I had on it is the way you heal yourself. I don't know why these games do it, but Dead Cells kind of did this too. When I need to heal, let me hit a button and get healed. Don't make the process of healing something that's going to slow me down or make it so that I get killed mid-heal or lose half of the health I just healed myself while I'm doing it. I don't see that as a fun risk reward. I see that as bad gameplay because all you're doing is artificially increasing the difficulty because I can't just heal myself when I need to. I mean, this is one of the things Dark Souls kind of does this, Elden Ring kind of does this, but at least it's a half tick where you're healing yourself versus this game you have to throw the ink thing in the air, inject it in yourself. It takes like 10 seconds. And I can't tell you how annoying that was. And really was my biggest complaint with the game, other than the fact that I just don't care. Like, you already know this is a game that takes place between, I think, Return of the Jedi or I don't know, wherever it takes place. You just know it's leading to Jake Skywalker, and I really didn't give a damn because at the end of the game, surprise, surprise, the big MacGuffin you're going through the whole time doesn't matter because how could it matter if they're trying to tie it into the greater Star Wars lore? But I'll probably still pick up the sequel just because I'm stupid that way. And growing up with a name like Luke, you do get invested in the series. All right, moving on. This was what I was looking forward to. Another 2022 release that I picked up for $5. Callisto Protocol. And I heard nothing but bad things about this. And I wanted to see for myself if it was that bad. And the answer is yes and no. So yes, it is not Dead Space, but it's still fun enough for this price. Although I looked into the DLC of what the ending was in that, and holy hell was I irritated. I'm so glad I didn't buy the DLC. My biggest complaint, once again, is the story in this. You are playing as a smuggler who gets shot down at the beginning of the game by essentially an eco-terrorist, and then the eco-terrorist continues to stab you in the back throughout the entire game, and then blame you for the whole thing, which really I'm just not buying. I don't buy that these two would team up ever. I would buy that he would shoot her in the back as soon as he could, but doesn't. Even if they do need each other, because she's already left you for dead several damn times, including killing your best friend, who I think has a family, because they show little drawings of kids. So I don't know. Justice for your justice for the dude who looks like Joker from Mass Effect. That was his name, right? Joker. But overall, the game unfortunately leaned too much into the melee combat of Dead Space. I didn't find the enemies all that terrifying as much as I found it irritating. Though when you get to the stealth section, I don't know if this is just because of bad programming or what, but I did find stealthily killing all of the kind of clicker type enemies directly next to another clicker type enemy and somehow not aggroing them very satisfying. So that kind of turned the game around for me, and I did enjoy playing it. All right, getting down to the last couple I played this year. So this is one that I just beat this month, and that was a game that I thought was Hi-Fi Rush when I picked it up, but it was not. It was Neon White. And this was another game, story-wise, where you basically, somehow you guys are all in heaven doing these weird purgatory-like games, but every single important character in heaven was also on Earth, but you talk to these people and they've all been in heaven for years, and yet you're just recently there, you have no memory. Like, it's another one of those things where it all ties together at the end. And I'm telling you, man, it's one of the reasons I like Godzilla Minus One so much is that they really just told you the story from beat to beat to beat. And you didn't have to go and be like, oh my God, it was there the whole time. But yeah, gameplay wise was really cool. It's almost a speed running type game where you go through these different levels and you get cards that have abilities and the more like different gun shots. So you have a shotgun one, machine gun one, but they have secondary features where they can launch you into the air. They can you can put a thing in the air that launches you. You can do a giant blink. You can shoot out a grappling hook. And throughout the levels, you need to figure out how to use which cards where to get through the level as fast as possible to get a medal. And it was a very fun gameplay loop. I did enjoy it. Hidden throughout the levels, you can find gifts. You give those gifts to the corresponding NPC in the overworld, and then that will unlock side missions. Usually, some of them are insanely hard. Some of them make it so you can't use secondary abilities. Those were enjoyable enough, but after a while, I just started skipping the story and all the dialogue because I just didn't care. And I noticed these games now are putting these fast forward buttons in it, and I'm grateful for it because I was really tired of listening to all this junk. Oh, I missed one. I missed one because it was a download game on the Switch network, or like a classic game. So I played Fire Emblem Advance finally, and I really enjoyed it. Ellie's story was solid, with Hector and Eliwood was solid, or Lyn, not Ellie. Lyn's story was solid, and I thought the overall game was pretty damn good. The tutorial was a slog for someone who knows Fire Emblem. I get why Nintendo did it, because this was a brand new series, and they had to get people up to snuff. This was before even the GameCube one came out. But it did drag a bit. It is far better playing it than, say, some of the NES or SNES ones, because you have a lot of the quality of life features that you are used to. And it did have the point where you were recruiting people on the battle. You didn't have a big central hub you had to worry about. Very fun. Not on my top Fire Emblems. I did appreciate that they allow you to start the next, the New Game Plus, post the Lyn section, as that's the prologue, and you can play as Hector. And there are bonus levels you can open up if you defeat a level in a certain way. So let's say you keep someone alive, or you beat in enough turns, or you capture enough things, or you save enough houses, you can open up side missions. But there's so many side missions that it really elongated the length of the game, to the point where towards the end, I just wanted to finish it. But solid Fire Emblem, well worth checking out. One that I still need to... I think it's one of the only ones I don't own physically. So after playing it this way, I definitely need to pick it up. All right, and then the last game I beat so far this year, we're not done with it yet, but was a game I've been wanting to play, which was Tunic. Tunic on the Switch. And I gotta tell you, if you want to play this game, do not get it for the Switch. It is so poorly optimized. It got better the longer I played it, but I'm not someone that usually complain about clipping or frame rates or things of that nature. But it played so poorly the first few hours I was doing it that I almost wanted to pull my hair out. It was so bad. Now, this game is very interesting. It's a Zelda clone. And what I would say is the game Full Quiet I talked about, where it really hammered home the exploration and the joy of finding things out for yourself. Tunic does a lot of that, but it does it in too cryptic of a way. So what it is you're in this world where no one's all the writing is something you can't understand, and you pick up manual pages. And as you do, the manual pages give you hints of what's to come in the game. So either, here's a map to an area where you're going to have to go, like a dungeon, or here's an ability you're going to get, or here's a secret code you need to do to open up a door, or here's just what stuff does. But at a certain point, I got all of the different pages except for 5 total. And even then, I didn't understand what some of the augments did. I didn't understand other things of that nature. And it has the ability for you to beat the game and get a bad ending, which I dislike. Because I don't know if once you get to a certain point in the game, you go from the light world to a shattered world. And there's no way to go back. So I don't, because I've seen the pages in both, I don't think I missed them permanently. I think I have to go to the mountain door and open it. But even after getting all of my Heroes Corpses stuff back, everything, I lost interest. I beat the game. Don't force me to go back. And this is what Full Quiet got so well, is that yes, I was able to accomplish everything within the game without getting overly frustrated. Whereas Tunic, I got so frustrated even after I beat the game, I did not want to go back. Still a fun game, though. Still a fun game. Pick it up on something that isn't the Switch. And then a bonus. So this is one that I just started yesterday, is Persona 5 Tactica. Oh my god, I am just skipping the dialogue. I am skipping the story in this game. It is so stupid. I cannot stand this weebo crap. But the gameplay-wise, it is essentially Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, but with a better execution so far. And I am enjoying that. So I love XCOM. I love XCOM clones. This feels more like Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope because you can move your characters freely, but then it does rely on you taking cover, and there are certain rule sets about getting people out of cover and then getting bonus shots and then dropping ultimates. So I'm enjoying the combat immensely. Story-wise, I could care less. And I just started fast-forwarding, so I don't care about this woman's wedding and blah, 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 but it is fun. It is fun. I'm enjoying it. And that's what I'm at for 2023. So tell me about some of the games you guys got off your backlog this year. I knocked out, like I said, about 19 games, I think, not including the other 13 or 14 new releases I did. So it's a pretty successful year. I'm happy with the amount of stuff I got knocked out. Looking forward to 2024. And like I said, next week I think I'm going to do a video talking about some games that I hope to attack. And then maybe at the end of next year, we can do a review and see what I got to. But that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. I do have a Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. Like I said, I'm saving all that money up to get to a new computer. And once we get to that, hopefully we can get that done. I don't hold on to those funds for 10 years, but who knows? That's kind of what people do these days. Either way, I'm so happy to have you guys here. It has been so nice going through this year with all the new faces, seeing all the new comments, the likes, the shares. Maybe I think next year I'm going to give some thank yous to some of the top new people. You know, give you a shout out here, so you know who you are, Party Ninjas. But every one of you guys is equally as important, and I couldn't be doing this without your guys' support. So thank you all so much. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.